football first, then basketball, and then baseball. I know it kind of works in different orders here, but in Florida, that is the way the sports work. And so I was playing basketball, football, and baseball all year. That was all I did. Basketball was my main sport, as I think I mentioned earlier. And so going through middle school, I was getting pretty good. Like, honestly, I was really good. And people were starting to notice, and I was starting to notice about myself that I was pretty good at basketball. And so fast forward a little bit to my 8th grade year. I remember it so clearly because the last game of the season, the varsity, not JV, varsity coach of the high school that I was a part of, because they were kind of combined, they had elementary school through high school. The varsity coach came to me after my last game and said, hey, like, you're sticking around for to play for me next year, right? And I'll just never forget it because I was like, man, the varsity coach like wants to make sure I play for him because he thinks I'm good. Like, it was pretty cool. You can imagine 8th grade little Evan being pretty hyped about that. It was awesome. Like, I was flying high because they wanted me. And so going into my freshman year, I felt confident. I was ready to roll. I was like, man, like, everybody's watching me. I'm good at basketball. Everybody knows it. I know it. And so I had a great season. Like, I was fired up, and I was playing great my 9th grade year. But you get to the end of that 9th grade season, and one of the final games was against a school that was known to be really, really good, like ridiculously good. And so I remember going to that game. I can tell you the song that I was listening to. I'm not going to because I was not living for Jesus at that point. But I can tell you I was fired up in my room, ready to go. We get to the basketball court that was at their school, and I'm ready to go, right? Like, I'm coming at them swinging with everything that I have. And we start the game. They win the tip. Never good, but they won the tip. But the first pass of the game, I step up and steal it. They don't even get one pass off. I stole the ball from them. And I take off down the court. Nobody's keeping up with me. And I know, man, I have the first couple points of the game in my hands, and we're about to set the pace for this thing. And so I'm charging towards the basket. Nobody's even close because I was quick. And I took one step to plant towards the basket. And when my body went this way, my knee went the other way. It was not good. One of my friends who was running behind me said it was the worst sight he'd ever seen when he watched my knee go out. But long story short, turned out that I had torn my ACL and lateral meniscus, which if you don't know what those are, it's okay. I'm not going to explain it, but they're really important pieces of your knee that you need to be able to play sports. So what it meant for me was that I was going to have to get surgery and have one entire year of no full contact sports. An entire year of the one thing that gave me meaning and identity and value and worth and all my confidence about who I was gone for a year. But the story gets even worse, if you can believe it. The very next season, just a few games in, we were in a tournament, and I had a breakaway layup and had everybody beat except one guy who the second I got past him decided to push me, and I ran into a wall that was behind the goal in that particular court and broke 2 bones in my wrist. I was out for the rest of that season. That's my sophomore year. My junior year comes around. The final practice before the first game, I took one step in a defensive drill, and my knee went out again because I had massive cartilage damage from my first surgery, apparently. So I had 3 seasons down that I didn't even get to play the sport that I loved. And there's so much that happened in those 3 years that God did. That was when I fully surrendered my life to Christ, like I mentioned earlier. That was when a whole lot changed. But one thing that I know, and that we're going to talk about tonight, is I saw a change happen in me. A change happened over those 3 years, those 3 injuries, where I went from a place in the beginning of pride, being full of myself, really thinking highly of how good I was at basketball, which looking back, really wasn't that good. But at the time, I was just full of myself. I thought everybody was worse than me at basketball. To the 3rd year, right, after that last injury, I just wanted to play the game that I loved. Like, I just wanted to have fun with my teammates and play basketball. So I went from this place of pride to a place of humility. A place where I had to be real about my limitations and my weaknesses. And see, pride I think we're familiar with, right? Like, you guys probably have heard that word a lot. You can think through it and be like, man, like, it's when I think I'm better than other people, and when I put people down, when I exclude people from my group, or talk about them behind their backs. If you weren't sure, like, those all fit into a pride category, by the way. But humility, I don't know that we're as familiar with. And there's a lot of things that go into it. It plays out in a lot of different ways. But one definition that I would like to roll with for tonight is that humility is having a lower view of myself and a higher view of God. Humility is having a lower view of myself and a higher view of God. So I had to learn this, right? Just like you and me. right? We have to go through lessons in life and oftentimes learn it the hard way. For me, it was 3 massive injuries in basketball. I didn't learn humility. So we're going to take a look at a story tonight in God's Word that's in Luke chapter 7. I don't know if y'all have Bibles at all. If you do, great time to take them out. Start to turn to Luke chapter 7. We'll be in verse 36, so you can even turn there. It's probably on a different page than verse 1. Luke chapter 7. And so as you turn there, I'm just going to tell you, we're going to be talking about this story that has to do with humility, all right? That's why I bring it up. But just so you know, before we jump into this passage, where it's kind of situated in the Bible is in the Gospel of Luke, right? Like I said, New Testament. But it's the Gospel, so it's an account of the story of Jesus' life and ministry, right? From one person's view. And at this point in the story, Jesus has begun his ministry. He's begun going around teaching and preaching, doing miracles. People know who he is, what he's about. There's crowds starting to form to follow him. It is early on, but he's gotten some recognition. People know about him, right? One person in particular is from a group called the Pharisees. Anybody in here know who the Pharisees are? Like, y'all are familiar with that word? A couple of you. I'm not going to go in depth right now about what they are, but they were essentially religious leaders in that time, right? Super high up, recognized for their faith and obedience in the Jewish faith, right? So Jewish law, their expertise. There's a lot more to it, but just know, high up religious guys at that time. So one of the Pharisees was named Simon. He's a guy we'll see in this story, Luke 7. And so Simon knew about Jesus, and a custom back then was to invite people to your house to have a conversation about relevant topics, right? And people would come and listen in on these conversations. So Simon invites Jesus over to his house. That's the story that we're in right now. That's the picture you should have in your minds, right? Go to a little house in like the Jerusalem area and just picture these two guys having a conversation. But as we're about to see, somebody walks in and interrupts it all. All right, that's the story that we're going to look at. So, if you're with me, say, I'm there.
I'm there.
All right, thank you. So, Luke chapter 7, like I said, let's read verse 36 to verse 50. It's kind of a long bit of verses, but it's a good story, so pay attention. You got this. Verse 36, then one of the Pharisees invited him to eat with him. He entered the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table, talking about Jesus. And a woman in the town, who was a sinner, found out that Jesus was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house. She brought an alabaster jar of perfume and stood behind him at his feet, weeping, and began to wash his feet with her tears. She wiped his feet with her hair, kissing them and anointing them with the perfume. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, this man, if he were a prophet, would know who and what kind of woman this is who is touching him. She's a sinner. Jesus replied to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. He said, Jesus, say it, teacher. A creditor had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. Since they could not pay it back, he graciously forgave them both. So which of them will love him more? Simon answered, I suppose the one he forgave more. You have judged correctly, he told him. Turning to the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house and you gave me no water for my feet. But she with her tears has washed my feet and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but she hasn't stopped kissing my feet since I came in. You didn't anoint my head with olive oil, but she has anointed my feet with perfume. Therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven. That is why she loved much. But the one who is forgiven little loves little. Then he said to her, your sins are forgiven. Those who were at the table with him began to say among themselves, who is this man who even forgives sins? And he said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. So there's a lot that happens there, right? And I know there's a lot of weird stuff that happened there. So if you're kind of confused, that's okay. We're going to try to break it down some. Not going to explain everything, just a heads up. But let's start from the beginning, right? Take this picture of this woman. Who is she? We're not given a name or a story, just a label. We're given the label of sinner. She was a sinner. And what you need to know is likely what that meant in that time was that she was probably a prostitute in that town, right? She was probably living in outward sin, and everyone knew it. And she would have been rejected and outcast by society, especially by the religious leaders like the Pharisees. So she comes into the scene, and she starts doing all these weird things, right? Like things that we wouldn't normally do. But what Jesus explains at the end is that they were all part of the normal hospitality of having guests in your home. So think about it. It's a little weird to us now, but it's really not. Today, if one of your friends come over that's never been to your house before, what do? You don't just like let them walk in the door and wander aimlessly. Like you guide them, you bring them in, you say, here, have a seat. Here, would you like something to drink? Would you like something to eat? And then maybe you can show them around, right? You probably have some routine of hospitality in your house. It's pretty common among us. That was what this is, but a little more in depth and a little more significant for sure. We don't have time to get into all the details, but what you need to know is that Simon had skipped out on these hospitality rituals. He hadn't done them to Jesus. Now, we can't assume the reasons, but there may have been some tension between the two of them. But what we see is a woman that you wouldn't expect come in and serve Jesus in a way that goes above and beyond the norm of the hospitality rituals of that time. See, Jesus runs through them in the end, those last few verses there, right? He says, Simon, I came into your house, and then, right, there was supposed to be a servant that would come and wash your feet. They would bring water and a towel and wash the guest's feet. Simon didn't do that. Simon didn't provide that. But the woman did. He should have been greeted with a kiss. Simon didn't provide that. But the woman kissed his feet time and time again. He should have been anointed on his head with olive oil, kind of a generic oil that they would have had. She brings the most expensive oil, likely a large portion of her savings, if not all of it, and pours it out on Jesus' feet. All the time, kissing him, showing him all these signs of respect, right? So the next question, if you're like me, right, without getting distracted of how weird some of these things are, is why in the world would this woman do those things to Jesus, right? Why? That's what I'm asking. That's what you're asking. Well, Jesus explains it. If you look at verse 47, Jesus explains it right there. Read verse 47 with me. He says, therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven. That's why she loved much. So we see, if you look at those verses, there's some key words you have to look at, right? When you're reading the Bible, you got to pay attention. Her many sins had been forgiven, right? What tense is that in? Past tense. Yeah, it already happened. But that's why she loved much. So she loved so much by serving him in that way because she'd already been forgiven. She'd already experienced something from Jesus. This means, many scholars would agree, that there was some encounter that this woman had with Jesus before this story takes place. Alright? The Bible doesn't tell us that, but if you study it, you look at it, you can kind of figure that out. So this woman had seen Jesus do some sort of miracle, or heal someone, or just teach and preach, and she had encountered the living and true God, right? She had experienced the power that comes from his forgiveness that only he can offer. And her only response, this is the key part, y'all, lock in for just a second. Their only response to his forgiveness was humility and service to Jesus. She couldn't do anything but pour out her love and service to Jesus at his feet. Every single word in those first couple of verses about how she interacted with Jesus behind him, at his feet, weeping, kissing his feet, are all symbols of humility, are all words that point to she saw a lower view of herself because of how high she saw him. Alright? But there's a lot more to get into there. We'll get back to it. She's not the only one in the story, right? Who else is there? Simon. Well done. Good job. Pay attention. Simon the Pharisee, right? So, Simon sees all this happen, and what does he do? He doesn't get it, right? He can't even see all the beauty that's pouring out through the woman onto Jesus because he's so caught up by his pride, I believe, of questioning Jesus, right? You see, if he really were a prophet, his pride blinds him from who Jesus really is. His pride causes him to doubt the authority and identity of Jesus, all right? So, he's not even bold enough. Do you notice? It says that he said it to himself. He wasn't even bold enough to say it out loud. But Jesus, because he's God, knows his heart and says, hey, Simon, I have something to say to you. And I bet he was probably pretty nervous. Like, a lot more nervous than Jenna and I getting mics on stage in front of y'all, right? Like, this is Jesus. We got a whole bunch of people following. He's calling Simon out. He gets nervous, but he's like, yes, say it, teacher, whatever it is. Jesus rolls through that story, right? Y'all read it with me. But there are two guys. One owed a whole bunch of money, and one owed still a decent amount, but a lot less than the other guy. 10 times less, right? Whole bunch, 10 times less. The person who lent them the money, right, saw that they couldn't pay it back, so he graciously forgives them both, right? He says, you don't owe me anymore. And Jesus says, who would have loved that man more? The one that forgave him? And Simon says, probably the guy that was forgiven him so much more. He's right. And then Jesus maps that story onto this woman, pouring out her love to Jesus at his feet. So you have two perspectives here. You have Simon the Pharisee, caught up in his pride. You have this woman who would have been rejected and outcast by society, especially the religious leaders, because of her sins in her past. See no value anymore, just labeled as sinner. And one is responding in humility. One is not. You see, what I think we have to realize here is that Jesus focuses on one thing in this whole story, right? Is that he's not focused on the humility even. And I know that's the word that we're going with, that's the word that I started out with, but it's so important that we realize Jesus doesn't focus on the humility of the woman, he focuses on that she's been forgiven. That's a key point here, y'all. If you miss anything and everything else, just hear this. If you focus on humility as your goal, you're never going to get it. You're never going to live it out. But if you focus on forgiveness, the humility is the only response that is left. Alright? I'm going to explain a little bit more of that, because I know it's a little weird. We're trying to meet people with humility, but we don't get focused on that. We focus on forgiveness. Alright? See, the woman had been forgiven, her only response was humility. So, rather than taking the rest of tonight and laying out what a life of humility looks like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk to you about realizing the forgiving power of Jesus and how that leads to humility. Because I believe that there are two types of people in this room right now. There's two people. I think we all fit into one of the categories. Alright? One type of person that's in here, lines up with the Pharisee, who says he's fallen for the lie and convinced himself, I don't need forgiveness. The other person in the room is the person who lines up with the woman who says, I don't deserve forgiveness. I think those are the only two people that can sit in this room, right? I think we all fall for one of those lies. Even if you're in here and you're like, I follow Jesus, like, I really do believe in him, I follow him, I'm saved, and I'm living for him. Good, that's great, and I'm so excited. But I still think you have a propensity to fall towards one lie or the other. If you're like me and you were raised in church around a lot of religion, a lot of the Bible, you had all this Sunday school answers and everything, you probably fall for the lie like the Pharisee. We forget our need, how great our need for forgiveness was, and we forget how much we've been forgiven of. I think a lot of you in here can relate to that. Just a guess. But we forget how much we were actually forgiven of, so our life of humility doesn't follow. But the other person in this room, just lock in for 1 second, y'all, because I don't want you to miss this. Y'all good? Right here? Alright, I just don't want you to miss it. Like, the other person in this room has forgotten, or it doesn't think that they need forgiveness. Right? If you're like the woman, you're on the other side of it. Not that you don't need forgiveness, but that you don't deserve forgiveness. Right? So if you're in this room right now, I think there are some where you're like, Evan, you clearly just got here, so you don't know me. You don't know my story. You don't know what I've done. You don't know what I've seen. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what has been done to me. There's no way that I can forgive myself, let alone God forgive me. But can I tell you something? The most beautiful part of this story that we just read together, guys, don't miss it. There's nobody too good for Jesus, and there's nobody too bad for Jesus. There's no one too good that doesn't need forgiveness, and there's no one too bad that they don't deserve it. Like, because even when we don't deserve it, Jesus pours it out. If there's anybody in the world that didn't deserve forgiveness at that time in that culture, it was the woman that's talked about in this story. And she's the one that Jesus elevates and praises for the great love that she had for him. He even emphasizes that it wasn't her works that saved her. It wasn't her works that earned her forgiveness. She didn't deserve it. It was her faith that her forgiveness flowed from. So I want you guys to all be really honest with yourselves in this room tonight. Alright? And I'm closing, so you don't have to be fidgety or wonder when this is going to be over, right? This is it. Think about yourself right now. Be really honest. If it's the only time this whole weekend, be honest about your heart right now. Man, to the people in here that are following Jesus, do you really remember how much he forgave you of? Do you remember your need for him? That you need his blood to be in relationship with God? That you've sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and he paid the price for it for you to know him? Because the more you remember that, the more you will live a life of service to those around you. But to the other group in here, if you maybe don't know about this whole Christianity thing, if you maybe are just checking this out for the first time, or you just know, you've heard it, but you've never actually decided to follow Jesus, can I just challenge you right now? And just encourage encourage you, if you think that you don't deserve forgiveness, if you don't think that the God who created everything that exists could love you and forgive you of everything that you've done or been through, that forgiveness is open to you. Jesus is standing there extending that forgiveness to you. There's nothing you can't do or will do that will ever deserve it or earn it. He's already opened the seat to you. He's already offering you that forgiveness. And if you want the ultimate picture of humility, just look to Jesus. Because what Jesus did goes way beyond when he stepped foot on this earth. See, you and me were humans, right? And a long time ago, when God, the God of the universe, who made all that is, and who made you and me, knows every hair on your head, he created humans. He saw that we chose what was right in our own eyes, not his. We redefined good and evil for ourselves instead of the way he said it was, right? That's sin, right? You've heard that word. We sinned, and that broke our relationship with God. And there was nothing that we could do to fix it. God saw that, and he didn't just sit on his throne in heaven and look at us like, man, you really messed it up down there. The God of the universe stepped off of his throne, stepped down into the dirt and mess of this world with you and me, became humans like us, except he didn't mess it up. He lived a perfect life in Christ, right? He was perfect in every way. He lived a life we couldn't live. He was the sacrifice that we could never offer. He not only became human, he allowed us, when we didn't like it because he was too perfect and he was too good for us, we beat him up, we spit on him, we hung him on a cross and killed him. The God of the universe allowed humanity to kill him. There's not a bigger picture of humility. And rose from the dead, all so that, hear this, if you don't know Jesus in this room, also that you could have a relationship with him. Also that he could be in a personal relationship with you. That you could follow him and experience the life that he has for you. Guys, if you would, just bow your heads and close your eyes. Because I just want you to be able to focus right now. If you are in this room, and you have never made a decision to follow this Jesus that we just read about and talked about for so long, if you're not in a relationship with him, can I just ask you, what's holding you back? He's standing offering this forgiveness right now to you. And you don't have to do anything to earn it. What he asks is that you trust him, that his way is better, that you will lay down your life from this point forward and let him live through you and experience the life and joy that he has for you. So, I just want you to be real. Have you made a decision to follow this Jesus? If you haven't, I'm gonna pray right now. And in your own words, just pray along with me. Because this Jesus wants a relationship with you. He wants you to experience the life he has for you. The forgiveness that he has for you. So if you want to follow Jesus and give your life to him, just pray with me right now. Say, God, I know that I've messed up, that I'm a sinner, that I've fallen short. God, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but you've given it to me anyway. So I accept the forgiveness in Jesus. I believe that he died for me, for my sins. And God, I lay my life down and want to follow you and your way for the rest of my life. Lead me and help me to follow you to the best of my ability. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Students, if you made that decision tonight, can I, one, just encourage you, that's the best decision you'll ever make, because your life will never be the same. Because you've experienced a forgiveness like this woman that transforms you for the rest of your life. And we're about to pray here, or we're about to sing here in a minute, right? And when we stand and sing, we're going to have leaders in the back, all right? And if you made a decision to follow Jesus tonight, or at some point this weekend, you haven't talked to somebody about it, can I just encourage you, you need to talk to somebody, because they want to walk you through how to follow Jesus after this moment. And they want to be there for you and encourage you. And if you have any questions about this, they're there. So no matter what, if you have a question or you pray to accept Jesus tonight, we want to celebrate with you in the back and help you with the next steps, all right? So let me pray one more time. We'll jump into worship and we'll stand. And if you made that decision, walk to the back, all right? Pray with you. Father God, thank you so much for this night. Thank you for being so much better to us than we deserve. Thank you for your word and just all that it teaches us. But most importantly, thank you for Jesus, that you died on the cross for my sins so that I can know you. Y'all can stand. And if you made that decision, come to the back, y'all.